Good evening and welcome to the February 2011 Radnor Township Shade Tree Commission meeting. We have 5 items on the agenda tonight, and due to someone not feeling too well, we're going to go with 950 Mill Road first. Okay?
Yes, sir.
If you could step to the podium and identify yourself.
My name is Lawrence Rabiniak. I'm the president of the Radnor Chase Homeowners Association. And the plan before you shows a simple lot line change. We own some common land, and the people at 950 Mill Road made a proposition to us, a quid pro quo, so to speak. We have between our properties a flume, a concrete flume, which is falling apart. We've tried to work it out so that if we move our line over, the homeowner will take responsibility for the flume, and we in turn will give him a small amount of pervious cover for his property. So there are no trees involved, there's no development, it's a simple lot line change is all we have.
And the pervious cover is not new pervious cover, it's existing pervious cover?
It's existing pervious cover on the western border of his property. We had some trouble with the flume last year, and there's all sorts of problems. He is in construction.
Yeah.
I might point out, he's in construction, so he can fix this a lot differently than we can as a homeowners association. So if we give him that flume and some pervious cover, simply by redrawing the line, we're giving up a tiny, tiny bit of land to reduce our headaches.
No trees are involved.
No trees involved. There's not a tree on that tiny stretch of land. And there's no development, so even if there were a tree, there'd be nothing in danger.
It's this thing right here.
Yeah.
Does that, you're supposed to have a certain amount of open space?
Yes, we checked into that. Nick Cornelia is our lawyer on this. We took a look at all the open space. We have more than enough. We're giving up approximately 1/10 of an acre, one strip. And we have more than enough to cover all other obligations under density modification, which this is a density modification development that was done back in 1982, 83. So we have more than enough open space.
You're not in violation by getting rid of this land?
Oh, absolutely not. We've had that checked. The plan was checked against the original subdivision plan. There are no strictures in the subdivision plan or law anywhere saying we can't do this. We checked that before we went forward.
Okay, so you're coming before us mainly because it's a lot line change.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
welcome.
the quick turnaround. Thank you.
Yep.
It's good to be back in here. Sue knows I was chairman of the planning commission many years ago. I was on the planning commission for 11 years. We didn't have quite
Bless
digs this nice, but that's a long time ago when I was here.
What's your name again?
Was that Larry Herbiniak? I was here with Duncan Dubley and Dan Malloy with the time was Park and Rec and anyway, a long time ago.
Yep.
You take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is 15 Ridgewood Road.
Good evening. My name is Dean Deal. I represent the Ball family at 15 Ridgewood. The arborist that is responsible for this couldn't make it tonight, and I knew it ahead of time. There is 9 trees to come out on this property. To address the 9 trees, most of them are deplorable. There is some live trees on that property, and I don't know if anybody has had a chance to look at them, but the ones that we're taking out that are not dead are close to the trees that already are dead. The remaining trees, that 9 out, we're safety pruning 5 of them because the canopies are dying back, but they're worth saving. And overall, trees above 3 inches, there'll be 40 left on the property. So there's a lot of trees still left there. I noticed when I went by today to look at the lot, there is work going on there now that does not have to do with the trees. The folks that live there are paying their children a small stipend to pick up limbs that fall after each storm. They're going broke paying the kids the little amount of money, the nickel a limb. But it is a nice property with a lot of trees left even after the 9 are removed. It's a corner property. Most of the trees are in the back.
Is the back where all the ones are being taken down?
I'm sorry?
All the ones being taken down are in the back?
No, there's one on the right side off the driveway that's totally dead. There's 2 cherries that are joined together, and part of the one is worth saving, and the other one, half of the canopy is gone, so that'll be removed. And the only other one out front is in the front left corner, a rather big tree that will come out. There's another one there, a large one. The health of that's fine, it'll stay.
Okay, is there any, excuse me, any plans for replanting anything?
You know, there isn't. I don't know if you'll require it, but if they were, with 40 trees already on the lot, I don't know where they'd put them. They could put them in the front for screening, but you never see the house. It's hard, but that's not my decision. It would be the board's, I feel. But.
The 26-inch cherry under a large oak, why is that coming down?
The oak is fine, but the cherry it's kind of unique. It's growing right out of the oak tree. It looks like a codominant stem. It's seeded there a long time ago, got rather large, and now it's not doing well, but the oak is.
So it's the tree in this picture?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Dean, this picture represents just,
That's the large tree that would come out in the front left.
okay,
Yeah, that one there.
this is dead.
Not on, that one isn't. A lot of it is, but the tree's not totally dead. That's one of those that's like a 50-50. These trees, when I photographed these are totally dead.
Yeah.
This has a lot of dead in it, and some of the big branches are over the house. So the one they're taking this one out, but the one out farther by the street corner, it has some dead in it too. We're safety pruning that. But if a limb fell from that, it wouldn't hurt anything. A limb fell from this, it's a roof impact.
That's not the same tree as this.
That isn't. These were taken from in the back of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. I have you at a disadvantage because you can't see the background. But what I was trying to show was that a lot of these trees that we're removing, all but 2 of them, really are significantly dead.
For sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show that it's not like there was a partial canopy.
This isn't dead.
Right.
Isn't dead and is in good condition?
That's some dead limbs, but it's, my understanding, Howard,
Yeah.
maybe you could ask him again.
Okay.
One other quirk, when a family's on a budget, they'd rather not take as many trees out as we had recommended when we went through there. So the more they save, the more money they save.
Right.
These are impact trees, and they really should go.
Okay. Which one is question? Okay. The status, excuse me, of this one tree, could you explain that to me again? This one?
The canopy, we're keeping this. This tree, a lot of the limbs are, probably half of this tree is actually, if we safety prune it, we would take half the canopy. The recommendation, you shouldn't take more than 25 to 30% of a tree a year to
Right.
begin with. But half this tree is gone. So if we wound up taking the dead wood out, we wouldn't be affecting the live tree at all. But it's dying so fast, there's not enough material in it to keep that massive wood there much longer. So if this tree stayed, if we said, for instance, well, take everything down, but leave this one. In 2 years, this is going to have to come down anyway, I believe, because it can't stay alive much longer. There's not that much material to keep the trunk alive. And this one is the one closest to the house.
Okay, and what variety of tree is that again?
Poplar.
Oh, tulip poplar?
Yes.
And that's not on the list, then, is it? There's no tulip poplar on the
Sorry.
list.
No. Twenty-nine inch oak. He did call it dead, but half of it's dead.
So it's the 29 inch?
Correct.
And it's a poplar, but it's not an oak, and it's not?
No, it's not a poplar. It's a red oak. That was a mistake I made.
So instead of a large dead oak, it's a large red oak. It's not totally dead. Okay. From what I see of the pictures here, it is a wooded lot. It does look as though it has, a significant older canopy,
Yes.
and I'd strongly recommend that the property owners consider underplanting with some new canopy for the future.
Do you make that recommendation, or is that something we should follow through with?
No, I would make that recommendation, and I would choose like trees, large canopy trees, because if you're starting to thin these woods out already, it wouldn't be a bad idea to create succession for another canopy.
Okay.
Say, be replant the same as, 2 for 1 or whatever it is? Or is it 1 for 1?
So you're removing 9 trees altogether?
We are, and safety pruning another 5,
Okay.
and hopefully they'll last a while. There will be 40 trees left, but I also have a little bit of a disadvantage to you there. Probably one third of that 40 are large trees from 18 inches and larger. A third of them are smaller, down to 12 inch, but then the rest are in the, say, 3 to 9 inch range. So there's a variety of trees there now, but I understand your responsibility too.
Right.
And it almost seems a tough thing to replant under all these trees now, because if they planted deciduous, they're not going to get a lot of sun to begin with to get started. But eventually, like you say, there'll be a replacement. Unless it's okay with you if they can select a site, because while we're taking most of them out in the back where they're dead, it might be nice for them to plant even maybe something that isn't a large canopy tree, but some flowering trees out front. I don't know if that's their desire, and even if it was, if you'd allow it.
We're primarily interested in preserving large canopy.
Okay.
I mean, my first thought is if you're taking the 9 trees out, that perhaps you plant 6 canopy and 3 ornamental.
Would you repeat that, please?
Plant 6 canopy and 3 ornamental.
Okay. Time of planting, that should be done soon after the trees?
When it's appropriate. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, 950 Mill Road. Whoops, excuse me, we already did that one. 800 Lancaster. Oh, 344 King of Prussia, I'm not a sync, sorry. 344 King of Prussia. That's Villanova. Okay.
Good evening, gentlemen. Again, if I could borrow one of your prints to lay underneath this.
Pardon?
If I could borrow a blueprint.
White piece of paper.
Do we have it?
No, he wants to just put.
Oh, I
paper
see,
underneath it
I
to
see,
show.
I'm sorry.
The last time we were here,
So if you'd speak into the mic and if you'd first introduce yourself.
okay, my
and
name's
the
John
project.
Smirga. I am the engineer for Dr. Walker for this particular 2-lot subdivision. The last time we were here, we talked about moving the driveway from the western side of the property to the eastern side of the property. This drawing that you have in front of you now does that. This plan was presented to the Planning Commission a week or so ago as a revision to the original plan, which had the driveway on the other side, and they looked favorably upon this. And I told them that it was also the recommendation of the Shade Tree Committee to move it to the other side. That would free up trees along the border and protect them and give a buffer between this property and the next door property. That's been done. It now increased the amount of trees to be removed to 7, which is down right above the title block. There's one 30-inch tree that will be removed and 6 trees that are under 20 inches. So we are proposing adding 8 trees according to your ordinance to replace these 7 trees.
You say you're going to replant 8?
We will plant for, obviously, in answer to the ordinance, we have to replace the trees that are coming down. We will replace the 7 trees with 8 along the road, and Dan Malloy and I will work that out where they're going to go. But basically, they will be street trees. Species to be determined. We would take recommendations from this board if you wanted a certain species or a mixture of species. The grading of the lot actually works out better this way by putting the driveway on the other side. I'm now able to catch all the stormwater from the garage, from the driveway, from all new impervious cover into the underground seepage bed and soak it away. We're also going to gather water that goes down behind the garage, which has created a problem for the next door neighbors, and force it out to the street by putting a swale along the westerly side. The swale will be a subtle structure in the lawn that will direct water out to the front street instead of away from the neighboring properties.
Can you point that swale out to me, please?
It would start immediately behind the garage.
Okay. Okay.
And again, it'll be a very subtle swale in the new lawn that will be made, and get water from the back of the property out to the front. There's about a 6-foot drop in elevation, so the flow of water would be accommodated.
That looks as though it runs the water right along the edge of the house.
Well, again, it would. I could do it one of two ways: in a swale or in a pipe. Yeah, it would put the water alongside the house, but it would be in a purposely made design swale.
And that swale is going to be right within the root zone of those trees, is
Sure.
that?
And again,
And-
it'll be a
and-
surface swale,
a six-
probably no more than 6 inches deep.
And your 6-foot grade change is due to the topography.
Yes.
That sort of funny-looking rectangular thing in the front yard, that's underground stormwater whole thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Is it going to affect, there are 2 trees out there. I mean, that's not there as of now, is it?
We're taking those trees down.
Oh, those are 2 of the ones that are coming down. You're going to, so when you plant the new ones, you're going to make it so that the roots don't go in and bother that, or?
The new trees will be probably right along the road. They'll be street trees.
But not in the middle of the property?
Right now, there's none proposed in the middle of the property. But again, we're open for suggestion. I'm showing them as street trees along the street. And that's what Dan and I discussed, and he seemed to be all right with that.
Now, the one that's in the back, it's in that swale down on the sort of the bottom left-hand side, that tree is going to remain, right?
The 30-incher is coming down. The other one, there's 2 in the corner, they will remain.
That's what I meant.
Do you want to point out what you're talking about?
This 30-inch tree right here is coming down. This tree and this tree will stay.
Where, Howard, isn't that tree protection fence, is that what I'm seeing on the left-hand side?
Yes, there is some tree protection fence in there that will stay during the major construction, but after as the house is finished and regrading is done, the tree protection will be taken down, and then that settles. As the lawn is then installed and seeded and mulched, we will then put that subtle swale in.
So the swale is a carving out, or it's a building up?
It's basically carving out,
How deep?
about 6 inches,
Okay. How wide?
6 feet.
How far away from the trunk of the tree are you going to be?
Shows to be about 6 feet away.
Okay.
And what is the tree? What are the trees?
They're all maples.
And the sizes, I can't read them on here, so,
They're anywhere from 20 to 30-inch trees.
so you will, what you're saying is you'll be taking down the tree protection fencing and then digging closer to the tree from where the tree protection fencing is?
Yes. The tree protection is going to be there to protect it against, obviously, bigger pieces of equipment and construction equipment.
Right, but it is also supposed to protect it from being cut, because that'll be cutting any, so the any roots that are in the area, the tree protection fencing is almost worthless if you're going to take it down and then dig within that area, because you'll be cutting the roots in that area.
Again, the swale will be surface, we won't be digging down into the lower root systems. This is all going to be surface treatment.
With maples, the majority of the roots are going to be in the top 6 to 10 inches.
Okay.
So the whole reason we had you move the driveway was to protect those trees, and it now, this swale looks to me like it's going to counteract that whole.
Well,
the whole
again,
design
it
change.
was the pleasure of the planning board to try to do some drainage improvement there. And I could do one of two things, like I said. I could put a pipe in, or I could put a swale in. I thought the swale was less intrusive and less detrimental to the trees. Putting a pipe in, you're now going to be 3-4 feet down.
Well, where are you trying to alleviate the water from?
Coming down behind the garage and water being forced down that hill towards that garage, right back in here, and this neighbor, which is being inundated with rainfall and runoff from the parking lots. We're trying to help the situation by getting as much water we can out into the street and not towards the neighbor.
The uphill side's on the right-hand side of the,
Yes,
okay.
or up here.
So as it goes down, it's going the opposite direction. It's going
Yes,
from right to left.
It's going from here to there.
Would it not make more sense, in essence, to create some sort of a retention system to the right side of the garage and pipe it out under the driveway to the street?
We did an exploratory hole back there, and the percolation was not very good. We got better perk out there in the front of the property.
I don't mean the complete perk system. I'm just suggesting a collection.
Again, like I said, I can do one of two things. I can put an inlet in, collect the water and pipe it underneath the ground, but now I'm going to be deeper. I think I'd be more intrusive into your root systems.
But if you were to take your collection system from the right side of the garage and then pipe it out underneath the driveway.
That's where it is now. I'm taking all the downspouts from the garage. That will be piped underground to the front basin.
Right.
I have downspouts in each corner of the garage.
Right.
They will be piped underneath the driveway to the front basin. I'm talking about the overland that's coming from uphill, upstream.
Right, can't you put a catch basin in there somewhere and then tie it into the pipes by the garage?
Well, if I do not want to put it into the BMP in the front yard. It's not designed to take all that stormwater. I would have to increase the size of it.
So where's the water in the swale going?
Out to the street.
So couldn't you then have the water go to the street, but going to the right-hand side of the house?
No,
Because,
because the grades there and the
no, but
distances.
if you captured the water in the area of the new garage and had it then go to the street, if the water is coming from off-site and is coming overland, is which you're saying, from the east.
Yes.
From the right. it would seem you could either capture it on the east side of the property or the west side of the property, on the right or in the left. If you were capturing it on the right, somewhere near the new garage, and having it go out to the street that way, instead of going around the house to the left, you then would be protecting the maples.
That would, yeah, you're absolutely right. But now I would be forced to excavate through the steep slopes.
Through what?
Through the steep slopes. There's a band of steep slopes right here. I really don't have that much room, no matter where you go. And again, Dan and I thought that a swale was the least objectionable to the topography and to the situations that I have here.
The important thing is that on the right side of that driveway, it's a really steep thing. It's not like, it looks flat, but it's not flat. That's what he doesn't want to have to cut into. Not that I'm siding with him, but
Well, you'd be going underneath the driveway. You won't be in the steep slopes, right? With your pipe. And your box is going to be behind the garage on the right-hand side, catching the runoff from the upper hill property. So,
Well, now you put me in the position that if I put an inlet and I put it on Lot 2 and I pipe it underneath Lot 1,
no, you're on the same lot where the garage is, unless I'm reading this wrong.
Yeah, you're reading it right.
Right-hand rear corner of the garage. That would be the east corner of the garage.
put an inlet back there.
That's on your lot. Take the pipe and run it down the drive and dump it in the front lawn.
or the street.
No, it'd go to the street. I can't put it in the front
All
lawn.
right, then take it to the street. You're going under the drive anyway with the other pipe, right? It's another pipe.
I could do that.
Beautiful.
It's not the best. It would be a tight fit, and I'll talk to Dan about it.
But the key is you would not be jeopardizing the roots of any of those trees along that other side.
Yeah, and I could take that swale away then.
So what did you mean you could take that soil away?
Swale, I
A
would.
swale. Okay, I thought you said soil. Okay.
So now I would just be scratching the surface for, putting grass and lawn in, not digging.
Okay. Well, that's our recommendation, is to put a catch basin in there and pipe it out to the street underneath the driveway. Okay?
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What's up? 800 East Lancaster, Villanova.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Identify yourself.
My name is Stuart Appel. I'm a registered landscape architect here representing Villanova University. With me also is Robert Morrow from Villanova University and Karen McMillan, who is the project engineer.
Okay.
I just, when we were here a couple of weeks ago, I think we left off, there were 3 requests, one of which was for you to have updated full-size scale drawings, and hopefully you have now received those.
Yep.
So those are now, they're detailed, and it shows the proposed landscape plan for the entire first 3 phases of the campus that we're doing, new tree locations, shrubs and ground covers, as well as the rain gardens. And that's the L100 series. And then the 200 series identifies for you the transplants and the removals that we had previously presented. I don't think that has substantively changed. So that submission has been made at your request. The second item that was discussed was we had discussed the possibility of transplanting, saving and transplanting that large dawn redwood that is currently exists in the what we're calling the Kennedy Oval, and so that is something that the university has committed to do. We have been working with Bill Graham and other tree specialists to develop a plan to root prune and relocate that. And that is also shown on the plans. It will move out towards the front lawn, so it'll be more visible, and it'll be in a place where we can move at one time.
When you say the front lawn, what is the front lawn?
Long Lancaster Avenue?
Pardon?
Front lawn?
Yeah, if you look, let me show you specifically.
It looks like on 202 it is shown where it is planned. It's near the oval, but just to the lower left.
That's currently where it exists, and it's going to, if you look on L104, it will be just south of the Sear parking lot. I say the front lawn, that big lawn out in front of Lancaster Avenue. So just to put that in context, that would be right here. Here's the Township building. This is the lawn, the church road. So that would be.
Take it for a ride, huh? That's good.
Well, we want to save it. We want to move it one time. Great. And it'll also be quite visible.
This is just a small.
Okay.
And then the third request, which is a sheet in the, I don't know if that was stapled or sent to you separately, but you have that, was to provide some additional greening along the north side of Lancaster Avenue as part of this project. And so we had discussed when we were here the idea of not necessarily providing a row of street trees on the north side, primarily because we really consider this front lawn, if you will, as rather iconic. It provides tremendous views to the specimen beech trees that are on in that open space. It also provides views to the church, which is critical and rather significant. And so rather what we had talked about was providing copses, small groupings of trees. And so what we're really showing is sort of places where they could appropriately go so that they provide some additional greening along North Lancaster at just off the intersection at North Ithan Avenue. So they're set back because that's a major movement where students can go across from one side to the other. And I should say, shown on the south side as really as a placeholder, and this comes from the campus's, the university's master plan, which is something that's on their website. It's all future. There's not an application before the township showing that, but it is kind of in their vision. And so there is an intention for what is now a huge sea of parking to become future buildings, and for greening along the south side of Lancaster Avenue. So conceptually, we sort of just wanted to show that. So, and we think that the idea of providing these groupings of trees as rather than a street trees would provide quite a counterfoil, provides the view to the church. And what we've also shown is some softening of landscape on the south side of Doherty, because that right now is quite visible, and so we're showing 4 shade trees there, as well as some additional evergreens and deciduous trees to soften the south side of what is there, the loading area that services Connolly. And so we're sort of really viewing the north side of Lancaster as the greening that encompasses that entire open space as a visual experience, as opposed to just the edge of North Lancaster.
So with the new deciduous trees and these groupings, what sorts of trees are we talking about? Are we talking about ones that will become large trees?
Yes, I mean they would be. We haven't sort of identified the particular species, but I think we're sort of looking at the kinds of things that are there in terms of maples and oaks. I don't think we would put specimen beech there, because I think as you can see from the groupings, we're deliberately sort of staying away from that. So we allow the open space to set off those specimens visually. But things that would sort of work well in an informal deciduous group, and also become a backdrop to the corner should the university have future improvements for those crosswalks.
Would they be real tall, like 20 feet or 30 feet, or shorter than that?
No, I think these would be major trees. These would be deciduous,
So 80
canopy
80
trees.
to 100-foot trees.
Not in our
Actually,
lifetime,
yeah.
but yes.
Well, I hope you live long and see them.
Your mouth to
But
God's
they would,
ears.
so oaks and large maple,
Right.
ones that would become
Yeah,
large
and
canopy
I think
trees.
we'll also be sort of looking at some understory along the edges to create this sort of informal arrangement, perhaps some ironwood or something like that. But these fields are the one on the left, the large one that says where the view shed goes through. There's actually, I don't know if we can see it on there, but there's a ball field there. So there are softball games that are played there. So there's active recreation. So we really wanted to stay away from that. And then on the smaller one, there's passive recreation. They're not formal games, but the students play football there and kick soccer balls and what have you.
Okay. The only comment I have those 2 beaches that you have out there are wonderful. My guess is they're probably reaching the end of their cycle. They typically only go for about 100 years, and it would surprise me if they're in that category. Down the road, I would recommend that if Villanova wants that kind of image out there again, that it might be time to start planning for it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the groupings of trees is different than what we've often done with street tree plantings, but I think it's an interesting concept, and I think that'll look good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Howard, I want to add that we do have a baby beech in front of the cemetery that's been there maybe 5 years, so we are
Good.
working in that direction.
A baby beach.
We've recently been contacted by the Villanova School of Engineering with some of the biofuel development that they're doing, and they're looking for samples of various types of wood. And I said that Villanova would have a lot of wood. So that's something to keep in mind also.
Okay.
Just to commend you on transplanting that tree. That was a great thing.
Yep. Well, thank you, and I think it was nice that we had the opportunity to have that collaboration on site. I think that made a big difference.
Yep, for sure. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Okay, 615 Newtown Road.
Good evening. Dave Fiorello from Omni and Associates.
I'm Chip Vaughn.
We were before you last summer with this project. We received your recommendation to proceed. You had a couple comments about some of the interior circulation, which we've made on the plans. It's taken us this long to get through to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, at their meeting last month, via a comment from Dan Malloy on the plans, was to install sidewalks along Newtown Road. We're here tonight with some sketches. They're not reflected on the plans that were submitted to the Planning Commission. We're actually asking a waiver, but we know there's going to be a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission meeting, and we wanted to we looked at the possibility of putting sidewalks along there, and we wanted to approach you tonight with our views of some of the impacts of those sidewalks and to get your comments so that we can go back to the Planning Commission, at least saying that we've met with you and we could hear your input. What I have here on the table, and I'm not sure if it was in your package, but we looked at the scenario of placing a sidewalk along Newtown Road along the whole frontage of the property. What's shown on the screen here is the frontage along Newtown Road. This is the western portion of the property. We have a match line somewhere in the middle, and we're coming up with the eastern portion, which almost ends at the existing driveway. We have a little bit of an embankment, a 4-foot embankment off of the edge of the driveway. And we have what I've shown here in yellow would be the alignment of the sidewalk. And we looked at two different scenarios. We looked at scenarios of providing fully ADA compliant sidewalks, maximum 5% grades. PennDOT is sort of taking the position henceforth that all sidewalks have to be in compliance with handicap standards. We're faced with the problem here is that if it's in their right-of-way. We've put this, we're trying to work outside the right-of-way so that we can at least present what the impacts are of the grading and the impacts of what the sidewalks would be. We're trying to avoid having to get a PennDOT permit, so we've actually placed the sidewalk outside the right-of-way. But in doing so, we're faced with the problem that we have 6% grades on the western portion. We have 8% road grades on the eastern portion, and to get a sidewalk with a maximum grade of 5% along the frontage, we have to do some considerable grading along the frontage. Shown here and I'm not sure how easily it comes up on your screen, but we have shown some contour lines, some cut lines here in red. I was hoping they would be easily more readily available for you to see. But we're approaching cuts on the eastern end of roughly 6 feet in order to maintain a 5% grade in the sidewalk. I have shown grading with a 4-foot sidewalk, 2-to-1 slopes coming back, and we're pretty much have a swatch of grading and disturbance roughly 15, 20 feet wide along the frontage there. We looked at a second scenario where we are trying to comply with the Federal Highway Administration guidelines. The Federal Highway Administration recognizes the fact there are some roadways that you really, they're existing to put sidewalks along there. Their recommendations are not to exceed the existing grades of the roadways. So we have our sidewalks at 6% at the western end. We have our sidewalks at 8% on the eastern end. But because we have the embankment coming off of the driveway where we're trying to tie into, we still have a lot of grading in there. Our grades, maximum grades are 4 feet. We come back up to maybe 2 feet deep, and then we can probably, towards the middle of the site, pretty much approach the existing grades, and then to come down to meet the 6% grades down at the other end, we're doing some cutting again, which again requires a lot of clearing and grading along the frontage of Newtown Road.
Are there a lot of trees in that right of way? Is that right? Is that what the big issue is? There are a lot of trees in that
There
area?
are trees there. Towards the middle of the property and towards the, shall we say, at the eastern end, most of the trees are saplings, 2, 3, 4 inches. There are a couple large trees sitting back further away from the roadway. As you get towards the eastern end, the western end, there are a number of trees. Going out there and looking at it, you could say, well, we can weave a sidewalk in between here to make it fit. But in order to get the grades to work, to try to get them accessible so that you're not climbing up steps at one end and working it down to the other one, we do have to have a certain amount of grading. And that certain amount of grading requires us to do considerable clearing along the frontage there. Again, we are going back to the Planning Commission to ask for a waiver of putting in the sidewalks, but the Planning Commission, Township Engineer, like the idea of sidewalks, and we're trying to at least investigate the impacts and get your comments. And Doug, I think you can probably comment on what the Planning Commission's thoughts were.
They generally wanted sidewalks there because they figure in the next 50 years, as that area grows, they're going to want people walking down the side. But,
well, I also have planning to present to the Planning Commission aerial photograph of the site, and there are, within 1,000, 1,500 feet of the site, there are no sidewalks anywhere. So, we're questioning the usability, if a sidewalk was to put in, where it would actually connect once you get west of the site here and you're faced with some grades along Radnor, Chester Road, Newtown Road, and the narrowness of there, whether it's really in the best interest, well, not say the best interest, but how much would they get used if we put it in there? And is it worth doing the grading and the disturbance to put something like that in?
And just so the rationale for the Planning Commission members who were in favor of this was that even if later on, 10, 20 years down the road, they decided to put sidewalks down Newtown Road all the way to Darby Paoli Road, in this particular, it wouldn't be able to be of any value if they weren't in here. It's sort of like the first section of track in a long road.
Yes.
That's not saying it's the right thing to do. Okay?
Well, it would be very difficult to put sidewalks along the rest of Newtown Road because you're faced with the same situations as here with embankments, depressions, stream crossings, and things like that. Most of the houses on the south side are faced with the same situation where you have embankments that rise 4 feet, 5 feet off the edge of the road. There are some large trees along there.
And in addition, when you get to the end of it and you start going down to Sproul Road, that's not exactly conducive to pedestrians either.
Yes.
I understand.
I had also made the comment at the meeting that I probably drive that road at least 2 or 3 times a week, and it, from one end to the other, it is a very rural road in a very congested area, not congested area of the township, but from a traffic point of view. To put a sidewalk in there and clear basically back 12 feet,
12, 15, maybe 20 feet.
not that there are any large, there may be a couple large trees, would just ruin the whole character of the road, in my opinion. So forgetting all the other reasons that don't really make sense to me, but especially if you get down toward Ardrossan, there's a stone wall that runs, I just drove by there today. I don't know how long it is, but I don't know how you'd get a walkway in there either, so. So we're not here to get your approval of this. We'd actually kind of like to have your unapproval of this. But anyway.
We're here to seek your comments.
Has there
Might be a
been
better
a
way to-
calculation of the impact on trees if that sidewalk were to go through? Have you sat down and done an actual count as to how many trees would have to be removed over 6 inches?
I guess it depends on which plan you're looking at. We're taking the case of the 8%, which is probably the least disturbance. We're showing about 8 trees. Some of them are in the 4-inch caliper range. So I think we're probably talking tree removal of probably 4 to 5 in excess of 6-inch diameter trees. However, you know, the grading impacts, as you had mentioned earlier about the comment with your swale in the drip line of some of the trees, there is going to be some grading within. I mean, there's canopy that overhangs that whole frontage there, so there's going to be a significant amount of grading that would affect even the trees that would not come down.
Right.
Dave, the 6% slope is mandated by you being in a PennDOT right-of-way?
Jim, we're trying to stay out of the PennDOT right-of-way so we don't require a PennDOT permit. Because if we require a PennDOT permit, PennDOT's going to come back and say 5%.
5%, and just...
What I mentioned is the Federal Highway Administration guidelines for sidewalks was to not exceed the grade of the adjacent roadway. So we have 6.25% on the west, so we're keeping our sidewalk maximum 6.25. And we have 8% slopes on the eastern end, so we're keeping our sidewalk at a maximum 8% along the eastern end.
I understand. Okay.
And by keeping it out of the right-of-way, will that reduce the amount of clearing that would have to be done?
What happens is that when you actually push the sidewalk closer to the roadway, because we're actually trying to make the grades on the eastern end compatible with the road, and we're coming off of the driveway that actually sits back a little bit further, we're actually we're taking the embankment away from the whole front of the eastern end and actually grading the roadway down to the sidewalk, which really I would think is a hazardous condition. So where the edge of the road is, all that drainage now would then run off instead of run down the property following the edge of the cartway. It would run into the site, and because the sidewalk would be lower, that would act as more or less a drainage channel, taking all the road water and then running it down through the sidewalk, which I don't think is a good condition. The layout here places the sidewalk far enough away from the roadway so that we don't have those drainage problems, but not so far back into the site that we're taking more trees or more grading than we would have to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when I'm trying to answer your question. If we're in the right of way, we have to do quite a bit of grading to get the sidewalk at 5% 6%, which means the grading, I think, actually goes further into the property than if we stay outside the right-of-way with the sidewalk. Even though the sidewalk's further away from the road, there's less grading, so you're about at the same point. So I think either way, you're about the same amount of disturbance and therefore clearing. I don't know that that's...
That's pretty close, but again, if we're within the PennDOT right-of-way, we're looking at 5% grades and 6-foot cuts versus 8% grades and 2-foot cuts.
Okay, I see your dilemma.
If they were to cut all those trees down, would they be subject to replanting requirements? They'd have to, if they took down like the 5 trees that they're talking about, they'd have to plant 5 or 6 more to replace it? I mean, this is along a sidewalk kind of area.
Yeah, if it were just a clearing permit with less than 6 trees, they'd not be required to replant. I guess my thought, and we don't have what you're showing. And as the Shade Tree Commission, that's what we are most concerned about, is the impact on trees, and we really don't see that. It's tough for us to make a decision.
Understood. These plans were just submitted yesterday.
Okay. And if this proposed sidewalk is within, the drip line of significant number of trees, not just the actual path itself, what trees are within that path width, but the impact of the trees altogether. At that point, I think we could make a decision, but without that information.
Well, again, I think I mentioned we're asking a waiver not to do this, and consequently, they're not reflected on the development plans that were submitted. And these were separate exhibits that we planned on presenting to the Planning Commission and have them before you tonight.
How far, in that right of way, could you bring that up here? How wide is, I mean, you show this in the yellow. Is the yellow the actual width of the right of way?
The yellow, what I'm showing in yellow on the plan is a 4-foot wide sidewalk.
And you'd have to disturb, what, another 1.5 or 2 feet on either side of that? I mean,
Roughly, yes, if we were following pretty much on grade with where we were, but.
Just depend on the thing of 8%.
Well, when we're down to the 8%, I think this plan is showing the 5%. Let me go back to the other plan. It doesn't show as much. See, yeah, this is 8%. We have 8% here. We have 5% as it flattens out here, and then we have roughly 0.5% where we're following grade here, and then coming back to a maximum of 6.25 at this point here. So our steepest 8% is probably within just 100 feet or so. But we're grading back at a 2-to-1 slope right off the edge of the sidewalk, and coming back. We've got 4 feet of sidewalk. We probably have another 3 or 4 feet on either side of the sidewalk of grading. So we're in the 10, 12-foot range of disturbance.
So right up here, there's not a lot of trees right now. I mean,
No, but
it might affect this one or two, but down here,
yes,
the construction and stuff would go all over the roots of these things.
yes, they would.
So I don't know what these are.
Well,
So 34 inch.
we have poplars. We have 10-inch. We have some small inch.
1 in 20.
So we're not talking about just the ones in the right of way. We're talking about
Well, down in this area, you can see the extent of the grading doesn't go that far back, but yes, we are in the canopy.
So you're going to lose, but you're likely to lose a lot of those trees if that matters to you. Hey, look at this.
Of course it does. if the sidewalk wiggles and goes into the right-of-way in some spots, does that then require you to do the 5% for the whole thing, or is it just 5% in the part that wiggles into the right-of-way?
That's the unknown.
Okay. So a couple thoughts have come to mind for me. I can see the future advantage to a sidewalk, but if right now it doesn't connect to anything, to spend a lot of money in paving a sidewalk that is kind of the sidewalk to nowhere, it seems like that by the time it would connect to something, it's going to have to be repaved anyway. And so one thing I'm wondering is if a gravel surface would work, or some sort of more informal path, which would presumably be less expensive for you to do also, but would reserve the space for a sidewalk. And then I'm also wondering if wiggling it some to keep it away from the big trees.
I think that's a great idea. With a gravel walkway, you're kind of restricted on how accessible is it in terms. I'm not sure you'd be riding wheelchairs along there, but it's not something that is conducive to, the accessibility end
Right.
of the thing. But I think we could, it could be, you could meander a path on grade through there. The only issue comes down to, I think, is probably at the easternmost end of the site, where then we have to go down this 4-foot embankment. I thought of putting steps in there, but I thought that would have been odd. So, I graded it at 8%. Most of your handicap ramps, 8% is the maximum grade on a ramp. That ramp can't be any longer than 30 feet, and it has to have handrails on either side. But still, it's also ADA requirements.
So I think one of the things that you might want us to first, the ideal would be for us to say, no, we oppose the idea of the sidewalk, and you can go to the planning commission and the commissioners with our statement of that. And I'm not willing to say that myself, but it does seem to me that we could offer some suggestions that perhaps would be a way of coming up with a compromise.
We'd be welcome,
right. And so that's where that if it's graded to be eventually accessible of some way, whether it's 8% or 5%, I'm not, but it sounds like there's a possibility that 8% would work. If it's graded to that, but if it doesn't connect to any other sidewalk, I question whether there's a need to have it be paved to be accessible to a wheelchair at this point in time, with the township saying that the homeowners at some point in time may well be required to pave it, just as I think other homeowners who have sidewalks are required to maintain their sidewalks. But if it instead that space were reserved right now, graded, wiggling where we can to get around the trees, but to me the compromise might be on not paving it at this point in time, doing it gravel, wood chips, whatever is a feasible way of doing it. I certainly support the idea of not clear cutting that whole area if that's possible, because that's a very beautiful part of Newtown Road, and that's one of the things that gives charm to Radnor Township. Big trees also do, and so we're also concerned. We generally aren't all that concerned about 2-inch trees or 4-inch trees, except that they'll grow into big trees. But the idea of just clear cutting that whole area bothers me a great deal too.
The sidewalks, I don't dismiss the idea of the sidewalks, but when you start looking at the design implications, how you're designing to meeting all the accessibility requirements nowadays, you do come into some issues, and we're aware of that. And maybe if, like you said, it was graded to a point where would be more or less trail-like and not a public sidewalk that could come back in and be serviced later somehow or another.
Because it seems to me what the commission, the planning commission, if they're the group that's asking for the sidewalks.
Well, what it is an ordinance requirement saying that sidewalks have to be along, I think it's minor arterial roadways, and this qualifies as that. So
Right.
it's an ordinance requirement for sidewalks, and sidewalks are defined as 4-foot wide concrete, the whole 9 yards.
So if you don't get a waiver, a total waiver, which I understand is what you'd rather have, it would seem to me that it might be then asking for a compromise waiver essentially, or, that, because reserving the space for a sidewalk and having it graded will make it a whole lot easier at some point to put in a sidewalk. If while you're doing the construction now, it does seem to be a logical time, plus it's a time when the township can ask you to do certain things. But it also seems to me that right now, that whatever stretch of sidewalk is just going to be its own sidewalk, and it's not a long enough sidewalk to connect with, because it's not connected to anything. It's not going to be an important sidewalk right now. And to me, to pave it and then 20 years from now, when it's finally connected to some other sidewalks, that it has to get repaved anyway, that just seems like a waste of money to me. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I just did a quick count using a scale, and you're impacting between 24 and 30 trees to try and put this sidewalk in. And that's trees over 6 inches, so. And again, I just did a quick count. It would be helpful if you could verify that, knowing what the real impact of construction of a sidewalk would be.
We can do that.
So what is your recommendation?
Recommendation is to come back with a plan that suggests the real impact of the sidewalk on the trees. I understand what Bill's recommendation is, and I concur with that.
I think we'll be before the planning commission before we have a chance to come back and see you again. And I think this will come up, I know this will come up at the planning commission meeting.
Right.
It's very likely. I don't control the agenda, forgive me.
Understood. We were just
one of
hoping,
the things,
we
grading
were hoping
it-
for some input that we could translate to
Right.
the planning commission, and I think, Bill, your comments are worth taking. Howard, I think when you noted there, you look at a rough guesstimate of 20 to 30, I think we can relay that information, and I can certainly, by the time we get to the planning commission, have a better number on that. But
Okay.
I understand you have a concern that putting it in according to the way we have it shown there impacts a lot of trees.
Yep.
And your concern is the impact on the trees. And I think maybe that's enough to relay that information to the planning commission. You're not saying one way or the other whether you're for or against it, but you're noting that it will have impact.
Yeah. No,
And
I
if
would
we can do
demonst-
that,
I would demonstrate the impact that it's going to have, because you're not going to be able to, sneak in there and put in a 4-foot concrete sidewalk without impacting some significant, 22-inch.
by the time you grade the area so
Right,
it's flat enough, and then 4 inches of stone, 4 inches of concrete, you've done.
Yeah, you're pretty far into that woodland.
And you're also moving the stuff around. The vehicles, the machinery that's going to be doing the excavation and so forth,
Right.
too.
Okay.
Very good.
Are we also going to, we're going to ask him about the real sidewalk with the concrete. Are we also going to ask him to do sort of like a side impact, like?
I think
just a
Bill's
gravel?
comments was maybe to relay that information as a suggestion that
Right.
we can probably discuss with the planning commission.
Right. To me, if paving is impervious surface, and we don't want any more impervious surface than we have to have. And if the sidewalk is not in reality going to be used as a sidewalk, because you couldn't get a wheelchair to that spot to walk then the half mile or whatever this sidewalk will be in length, and then go somewhere mysteriously with the wheelchair. It seems unrealistic to me and a waste of many resources to pave it at this point in time. And leaving it unpaved and so semi-pervious essentially will be better for the
Unpaved
township, I
as
think.
Grass or chipped or
In
something?
my mind, grass could, it seems to me, as long as it's made so at some point in time, it could be made into a sidewalk essentially easily without the major, so it's essentially a sidewalk right of way, or I don't know what it would be called, but it would, the township and the homeowners would essentially have an agreement that a sidewalk could be put in there, and it would, all the owners would have to do is pave it, or do a little work. That to me would be a reasonable compromise, and would minimize the impervious surface that we'd have to have in that area right now. Right. Yeah. And to me, to pave it right now with a pervious surface that would be wheelchair accessible would be somewhat along those lines. But again, I don't see the reason to do that right now, because by the time it would actually be used by wheelchairs, it's probably going to have to be repaved anyway.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any old business? Were there any hazardous tree reports this month? No? Okay. Okay, well, that concludes the February meeting. The next meeting will be March 17th? 23rd, I'm sorry. Yeah, March 23rd. Okay, thank you very much.